Hello, welcome to Celtic Down Under. This week hosted by myself, Sean, joined by our regulars Paul and Anthony, and the debut tonight from Tommy, who's also in WA, joining us for his first show on what is probably a good time to join in after the kind of weekend we've had. Today is now about 19 hours since the game finished, so we were all up at 11 p.m. for the kickoff last night, which means we'd have got to bed about 1:30 by the time things wound down. And today it's currently 8 p.m. and it's still 32 degrees. So we are all going to be slightly struggling, but doing our best to regale what happened last night. How are you feeling, Tommy? Say hi to everyone. If you'd like
Hello,
to introduce
everyone.
yourself, do, but don't feel under any pressure to give away any personal information. But otherwise, just let us know how you're doing.
Yeah, no, obviously, like every Celtic fan around the world, very, very happy today. I was a bit nervous, probably the last 20 minutes, half hour, like most of us. But yeah, very happy today, and happy to be here as well. So thanks for having me on. Thanks to Jared as well for getting me on. In terms of an intro, I've lived in Perth, Australia for 30 years, been a member of Perth Celtic Supporters Club for that long. I used to go to the games back home when I was when Liam Brady was the manager, so not the best. So certainly been a lot better time since I fled Glasgow. So, but I'm married with 2 kids, and I think that's about as much as I'll say. I don't want to go overboard.
That's all right. Sorry, we don't need your life story. We're here to talk about Celtic. Paul, how's you going at work today?
Yeah, it was a busy day actually. We just before we came on, Anthony was saying he had a busy day as well, and I looked at my diary when I got in, and I went, "Oh, that's not ideal." But to be honest, it's probably better than a slower day. It just got on with it and got through it. But yeah, it was. It's always a better Monday if you've won the cup final against the other Mhob, as maybe we should refer to them.
Journey.
But yeah, it was it was a pretty good day, all things considered.
And Anthony, was it tea or coffee that was caffeinating you through your day today?
Coffee this morning. I actually somehow got myself written off on Saturday night, so I was actually quite sober watching the game on Sunday because I was a bit rough on Sunday morning. But anyway, made it through, and yeah, I'm obviously glad because it was quite an action-packed game, which we're obviously going to get into in just a few minutes.
Yeah, and obviously this being the weekend review. Broadly, each week we cover some other topics, so I'm just going to quickly scrub those out of the way. Okay, so the rest, everything else that happened in sport this weekend: Dundee United sacked their manager. Man United won the English version of the Scottish League Cup. Tyson Fury won a game of punching people in the head, and Scotland are crap at rugby again. Okay, now that that's all done, let's get to talking about Celtic and the main event. Yeah, good. It was kind of the way I seen it going before the game was I'd predicted 0-0 first half, KG affair, and it kind of was going that way. But we did, when you think about it, I think in the first 20 minutes, Sevco had a couple of chances, and then kind of after that, for the next 25 minutes of the first half, we kind of dominated, and it looked like they were kind of hanging on to half time, and they didn't quite manage to. We managed to get that breakthrough just before half time. And again, I thought they were going to come out in the second half like they did at Ibrox, and they did in a effort sense, but not in terms of really creating chances. To be totally honest, I don't think Joe Hart had any sincere saves to make throughout the game. I mean, before we really get into the minutiae of it, what did you make of the overall kind of? How was the game as a spectacle? And the balance, Paul? What did you reckon?
Yeah, look, I thought that it wasn't unexpected how it went down. To be honest, we controlled the game without totally putting them to bed. They really try to pin us back and press us high, throw the ball long. They didn't really play through us. And yeah, it was frustrating at times. They had their chances, but really, I thought generally we were pretty comfortable without ever really taking the game away from them, as we probably could have if we'd taken more of our chances. So, yeah, it was certainly a tighter affair than it might otherwise have been, but generally not completely nerve-wracking as they sometimes can be.
Oh, I think they're always nerve-wracking. Tommy, how were your nerves?
I actually thought we started the game pretty well. I thought we were in control. I thought we were holding the ball well, keeping possession well. We probably weren't quite penetrating in the final third so much. And then they sort of got a couple of breaks of the ball in the middle of the park, which sort of led to that little bit of pressure from them. I think Carter Vickers blocked a shot and then blocked the cross. But aside from that, I actually thought we were pretty comfortable. And then probably the last 10 minutes of the first half, I felt a goal was coming because we were starting to make some chances. Kyogo with a couple of chances before he put the one away. So that's the way I saw the first half anyway.
Yeah, and like Ange came out even before, he comes out after every game at Hampden, and he came out before this one and said, tense affairs, always tense affairs, not really about football, etc., etc. And Anthony, did you think we were more on the football than we had been forecast by Ange in the pre-match?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of I agree with Tommy. I kind of felt like a goal was coming. Like Kyogo had a couple of chances, and you just felt it was coming, especially when he got the header. And he probably should have done better with that one. The ball in from Johnston was good.
Mm-hmm.
And you sort of felt we're just starting to screw the nut and just putting them under the cosh a bit. And then when the goal happened, I just said to myself, as soon as the ball went to Moy, I went, this is going to be a goal, because just everything just seemed to open up. It was like the partner of the Red Sea. It was just like, a couple of incisive passes. We got behind them, and it was literally the first time we'd really gotten behind them, and we scored. And I sort of thought, well, if we could do that a couple more times, this is going to be 3-4 now, like, we've sort of, a lot of the guys had predicted. But you sort of knew the start of the second half, they were going to come out and really have a go that first 10 minutes. And they hit the post and we weathered the storm. And then obviously we were at the park, made it 2-0. And then you're sort of thinking, all right, party time. And then it didn't probably quite sort of pan out that way for the next sort of 15, 20 minutes. But, at the end of the day, we got the result. But I kind of figured that we would have the lion's share of the possession and they would play counter-attacking football, because they're just long ball merchants. That's all they do. Goldson, Tavernier, they play that crossfield, long diagonal ball all day long. And yeah, I wasn't really overly sort of impressed. I just felt like we were the footballing team. When we got to show it, there was clearly, we were the better team, and we ended up winning the cup.
Anthony in the comments is saying it was like playing any other Premier League team that just plays hopeful long balls. And Andrew's saying we couldn't dominate as much due to the surface. I actually kind of slightly disagree on, kind of halfway agree on those points, but not fully. In terms of I didn't actually think it was the same as playing any other Premier League team, because I thought the press is we get a lot of medium or low press against other teams, but they were actually giving us a high press. And in terms of the surface, actually, because I felt like what they were trying to do was replicate what they'd done at Ibrox, but with those extra few meters that you get at Hampden, we were able to play our triangles to get out of the back, which we couldn't really do at Ibrox in a much tighter game. And that was, for me, the most noticeable thing, at least about the first half. And I was kind of watching it and thinking, this is kind of like, I wish we could get this more often, because when we come to Europe, and this is what we're going to face, this kind of high press in Europe, we really need to have more practice of this, because we don't get it against any other team. And we did well. We were doing well with it. Callum McGregor was just, for me, the best player on the pitch in the first half, and probably throughout. There's just, even the way he takes the ball, passes, turns, his defensive reading of the game, his blocking. I think he made one mistake at one point, and he recovered his own mistake. But I thought apart from that, he was just the absolute driving force in the game. What did you reckon, Paul? Did you, of Callum McGregor's performance?
Yeah, look, I think we've kind of touched on, even in the couple of weeks we've done this, is that, and it's been said umpteen times, he never really drops below an 8 out of 10 performance, does he? He's always kind of on it, and he's just neat and tidy, and like you say, a driving force for the team. I've loved how he's conducted. I love how we've all conducted ourselves this week in comparison to them, but particularly Cal, both in the run up with his press conference and then in the immediate aftermath. We'll do our talking on the pitch, and we did. But he just, I guess, what is it, 14 finals at Hampden, including youth games, never lost one, 11 senior cup finals, won the lot. He's played in great teams, during that period, but that's still a phenomenal record in cup finals. We've all been around long enough watching Celtic to know that there's always one that sort of sometimes goes the other way, or there's a bad decision, or just a luck of a one-off match in a cup final. So yeah, Carl was excellent. I think, you know, we were lucky, you know, not lucky, but I guess we had some really good, strong performances right throughout the team, which we didn't at Ibrox. And obviously there's a, you know, seems to be a story that there was some illness there. So, you know, that's not really much of a surprise if half the squad was, you know, not at 100%, but that seems to be sort of waved away in the mainstream media. But yeah, I think we had plenty of strong performers. It's hard to kind of look past somebody like Kyogo scoring both goals and saying he's not man of the match, but you know, you're right. McGregor probably epitomised everything that was good about what we did, and sort of even to the point where he was probably the driving force that starts the move for ultimately what becomes the winner.
Yeah,
and look, I you know, and Moy and Hatate, like I was on record last week saying I thought O'Reilly should have started, but you know, you can't really knock Moy's performance given that he was involved in both goals, if you want to call it like the secondary assist, if you like, on both goals. So pretty crucial in terms of his performance too.
Yeah, and the one you're talking about with the second goal, where he does take on those, like, he's crowded by three men in midfield, takes them on, beats them, and basically creates the chance for Hatate to get through. And I think immediately after that, the three players that were around him all get subbed. So I think Callum McGregor can put his stamp of ownership on those three players that had to leave the field because of him dominating them. And there was another one as well. I think apart from them hitting the post, I don't know, was their best chance. Maybe the one where Ryan Jack cuts inside. And again, it's McGregor that's getting the block on that one, like 12 yards from goal. So he really was everywhere. Who did you think was man of the match, Anthony?
I mean, I thought Moy put in a very strong performance for the 60-odd minutes he was on the park. I mean, unfortunately, the substitution just didn't come before the free kick, because he did get found out with Alfredo Morelos for the goal. But apart from that, I thought he was just, you know, the Rangers players was bouncing off of him. Like you say, he was involved in the two goals. It was just that one moment of just playing that silky slide rule pass, just the weight of the pass for Greg Taylor, so he didn't have to break his stride to whip the ball in for the first goal, and then playing Hatate in, and fair play Hatate on that second goal as well, because he had the thought presence of mind to look up and square the ball to Kyogo. A lot of players would have lashed a shot at that angle, but he actually cut it back. And, you know, again, 2-0, and Barisic again sleeping at it wasn't Abada ghosting in, it was Kyogo, but doesn't matter. We'll take it. But I think definitely Moy was the right selection. He was in my team this week. Nothing against O'Reilly. He had his chance at Ibrox, and I just think he's just not hit the consistent standards, and Moy's just on a purple patch, and you know, he just gives you a bit of physicality, because there was a couple of times where he just stuck in and won balls back and turned over possession. And I just think that, I don't think O'Reilly's necessarily got that in his game to the same extent yet. And, you know, this thing, O'Reilly's 21, he's got his whole career ahead of him. But at the moment, with Moy playing the way he is, for me, he's in the starting 11 if he's fit. And he bossed it as far as I'm concerned. And I thought that, you know, McGregor, Moy and Hatate, they had run Lundstrom and Tillman into the ground. I thought they faded within the first half. With about 5-10 to go, I thought they've just completely just dropped off. And then Lundstrom puts that stupid challenge in and at the start of the second half, and you knew the writing was on the wall for him. He was coming off. But I think, like, the one thing I would finish with saying is, I think Beale sort of said that, you know, he was looking for players to put their hands up to see who's fit. And I just think that I thought he made some of the wrong decisions. So I think he went with players who weren't 100% fit, and he didn't back Cantwell and Raskin, and there's two new signings. They were on the bench, so yeah, a lot for them to ponder, I think. Yeah, but you know, for us, onwards and upwards.
Yep, I agree with that. And I actually felt that maybe the kind of turning point in the first half, where we started to actually dominate and put the foot down, was when Moy got more involved in the game, when he started getting his body in between. Like, all he was doing was really just getting his low center of gravity in between the ball and the opposition players, you know, and it was really just opening things up. But it was amazing how like soft in the physical challenges that Kamara and Lundstrom were around about that, and not as surprising for Tillman. Did you think, Tommy, that it was the right decision then to start Moy ahead of O'Reilly, or do you think O'Reilly like looked more dynamic when he came on? Do you think O'Reilly's still lacking in confidence? Maybe like if he was more in a more confident run, that he would have scored that chance at the end to make it more comfortable. What do you reckon?
Yeah, look, I can't disagree with anything that Anthony's just said. I totally agree with 100% of what he said. I would have picked Moy and played Moy from the start. I think the form he's been in since the World Cup, he picks himself, to be honest. And the physicality he does give us in the midfield, that's a couple of times against Rangers, maybe in the semi-final last year, that we come up a little bit short. So that would be another reason I played him. O'Reilly's just, he's out of form at the moment. He actually hit his best run of form for me when McGregor was out, when he dropped a bit deeper. Since he's went back to the number 10, he hasn't been quite as effective. And I like the balance with Moy and Hitari. So it's not really a number 10. They're sort of playing two sort of number 8s, which gives us a bit of variety going forward as well. And Moy's just, it's all in his head. Like the first 5 yards are all in his head. He knows what he's doing with the ball, some of his passing into space, and he's involved in both the goals. So for me, that he's definitely the first name ahead of O'Reilly at the moment, but that's not to say, I mean, we've seen what O'Reilly can do, and it wouldn't surprise me to see him back to, that sort of form later on in the season. And he's only 21, so it's probably not a bad thing to have a bit of a spell out of the team. So,
is he? Oh yeah, you forget sometimes he's that young, don't you? Yeah, like, well, he was, so when I thought that chance he had at the end would have scunnered my coupon, because I had 2-1 on, so that was fine. I was like, still want them to score, but also, like, kind of still happy. The other subs
he really
that came
had to
on,
hit it with his right foot, didn't he? He doesn't have a right foot.
Yeah.
Or leave it for Abada. Abada was
about
actually a good position.
Yeah, I was just about to say, if he lets it run to Abada, he's coming into that on his right foot, and we've seen him smash them in pretty comfortably from those kind of positions. So, yeah, I was just watching back the highlights earlier, and I thought, yeah, he could have easily just let that roll through, and Abada was in a really good position to go in on it.
Do you reckon that he was punishing Abada, teaching him a lesson for that absolutely appalling dive? Was that like? Are we embarrassed, or are we just saying like that's part of the game now? What's our kind of take on this, Anthony, the dive?
That's terrible. And with VAR and now, what are you achieving? Because, I mean, even if the referee is conned into it, VAR's just trying to reverse it anyway, so there's no point. And the thing was that if he just stayed up, he was obviously expecting contact, and the contact never came. Ben Davies just did the thing and ran past him, but if he just stayed on his feet, he was in on goal. I mean, it was a bit of a bad angle, but he was still like in the box. Anything can happen, but yeah, that was pretty poor. And I think Ali and Chris Sutton sort of summed it up pretty. And I must have actually enjoyed their commentary. I thought it just puts Ian Crocker and Andy Walker to shame. Like, there's actually a bit of dynamism in the actual commentary, so it was actually quite, from that point of view, it was quite good. But
not a patch on Tom Boyd though, eh?
Oh, well, I sub in with Tom Boyd every now and then, but there's always so much tinfoil hat conspiracy that you can put up with on I love Tom, but, he can get a wee bit carried away himself.
Not in the commentary box, are we doing? Oh, it's too much. It's too much. But yeah, no, I agree with you. At first look, I thought, it's pretty embarrassing, but watching it back, he's definitely expecting the contact. And, if the contact, if Davis doesn't pull out of that and just continues his momentum, well, it's definitely a foul. So, regardless of how soft he goes down, as soon as there's contact, they're going to give it. So, look, I hate that part of the game. It's been a big part of the game for a number of years now, to the point where it's, it's just accepted that it's kind of a part of the match. But yeah, obviously we've all been long enough in the tooth when, you try to stay on your feet. And if he had, like you said, the ball was actually slowing up, he would have probably almost certainly caught it before it got to the touchline.
That's exactly what I was thinking as well. Why didn't he just keep going? I thought he would have got there. So, and yeah, it's not something that we like to see from Celtic players. I mean, we hate seeing it when someone like Ryan Kent does it, and we're quick enough to jump on them, so we don't want our guys doing it. But can see why he was expecting it.
At full pace, I thought it was a foul. I really did.
Yeah.
And then, so fair play to the Nick Walsh, who actually spotted it immediately, or the assistant, one of them. I actually felt that overall the officials actually kind of had a good game. I don't know, are you allowed to say that? Like, There
I
was
think
no
you are.
no VAR
I think
checks
you
to slow
are.
anything
It
down.
was that's as good as it gets. I mean, there was no VAR checks, and he got all the big decisions right, and that was a dive. There was no real controversial. There's nothing I saw. Oh no, he's got that completely wrong. He spotted everything pretty well. So I mean, you know, fairness where fairness is due. I mean, it was a good performance from the referee.
I thought it was really. I thought it was sorry, Paul. Just a quick one. I thought it was really good how he booked Lundstrom for the fouls straight away in the second half. So many times, guys and teams get away with 1, 2, 3, 4 fouls that are yellow card offences, and then they can continue doing it. And I thought that was he done that really well with them, both Lundstrom and Kamara. So I actually thought the ref was pretty good yesterday, considering.
I think, I absolutely agree. And look, I think we can, give credit where it's due. Like, we're all quick enough, regardless of how we're on the spectrum, whether you think that they're mostly just incompetent or they're, completely biased or somewhere in between, or there's an unconscious bias is probably nearer it. But like we're all quick to jump when they get things wrong, which, let's be honest, is pretty regularly, especially since VAR came in. So yeah, I think given the lineup that we had for officials, we couldn't have really hoped for anything better than the performance they did, which, as I say, got the big calls right and nothing got referred to VAR, which, refreshing to see the game actually flow.
Even when we kind of all agree that they've had a good game, like I think the general consensus was that John Beaton had as good a game as we could have hoped at Ibrox, but then there's always like one that people will pick on and go, yeah, that was apart from that. And I think the one that I've seen kind of popping up in social media today is apart from that was the yellow card for O. So we kind of talked off air, Paul, about the O and Iwata double sub coming on to like kind of solidify Celtic. I personally like O is just like this really like it draws the attention of officials in a kind of similar way that Giakoumakis does, because he just really like loves to initiate physical contact, and that kind of yellow card was, I think it's given because he's looking at the player before he makes the contact.
He lined him up.
Yeah,
he did line him up, but
so he's not watching the ball. He's looking at it. And then Iwata, for some reason, I've really struggled to track Iwata during a game. I don't know what it is. It feels like he's one of these kind of players that's like just doing things quietly and effectively. What was that a really strong double substitution, Paul? What do you reckon?
Yeah, look, I thought that was that sort of. I think that substitution really helped us see out the game. I think a lot of fans have become almost a little bit cynical to the fact that 60 minutes comes and 3 subs come on and you can pretty much set your watch by it. And there's almost a kind of bit of skepticism that there's not much kind of thought behind that, where, I think we all know enough about Ange to say that there probably is a fair amount of thought about that. And even though it's usually the same 2 or 3 positions that get swapped out, it doesn't always happen in the same order. And really, it's because of the level of work rate that the guys in those positions are putting in that, they've gassed themselves by that point. And we're lucky enough that we've got a deep bench, so we might as well use it. But yeah, the first wave obviously happened, and that was just as Rangers scored the goal and they were getting back into it. And obviously they get a natural lift from that, and there's a push on, and there's the potential for a wobble there. And then the 2 subs come on at, I think, 10 minutes after the goal. And really, I think that firms us up. O's then a focal point to hold the ball up. And even though he gets the booking almost immediately, it doesn't stop him being physical, and it doesn't stop him sort of looking and demanding the ball. And Iwata obviously sat in beside Cal rather than sort of playing that, 8-8 or 8-10 position. And that just firmed up us in front. But he was obviously fresh. So he also, in those chances, when we had those chances late on, he was one of the key players breaking forward. He was winning balls, he was breaking up play, and then he was advancing the play with forward passes. And that's one of those chances. I think the Haksabanovic chance, one of the Haksabanovic chances, he was key in sort of winning the ball and driving it forward. So yeah, I think you're right. Iwata he's neat and tidy. He just joins up the play. He shields that defensive position. But I think there's a lot to come from him. He looks a tidy player. I don't suppose you become the J League player of the season without being reasonably handy, given the quality of the players that we've picked up from that league already. So I'm really excited to see how he progresses and what potentially that looks like in next season. And assuming things track how we expect, I wouldn't be surprised to see 2 deeper lying midfielders in Cal and Iwata when we go away from home in the Champions League, if we're there again, potentially even some home games depending on who we draw against. So yeah, I think there's a lot to come from them. But if you think about it, from when those 2 players came on, they never really troubled us again after that. And if you think about the last 5-6 minutes as the injury time added up, because there was some stoppages and bits and pieces, that's about as comfortable as you would expect, you would hope to be in that kind of closing out a game. And that you always think, I was looking at my watch and it's like, 6 or 7 minutes to go. You go, well, they're going to get another chance. There's definitely another gilt-edged chance coming. And there wasn't really. Like, it sort of just petered out.
So say, the problem, the one that there was the one, the cross that came across, and Kolak missed it, and then Barisic missed it.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen it on any of the highlight reels this morning. I don't know what Barisic was doing, but he was stone cold asleep on his heels to that one. And it's the other point I wanted to make was you say that O being the focal point. I think that allowed us to go long as well. So Rangers were obviously applying a really, really high press, and Joe Hart decided to start punting it long and just taking some of the pressure off. And Ange says he lets the players decide if that's what's necessary. And I just felt that substitution, that, like you said, it did make a big difference because we changed our approach that last 10, 15 minutes. And it created chances for us. And like I said, it was as comfortable as you're going to get at a 2-1 in a cup final with, 5-10 minutes to go.
I've personally never felt, I hear it a lot from people that Joe Hart struggles with crosses, and yesterday was the kind of first time that I've really noticed it. It was, I don't know if it was a lack of confidence. There seemed to be something going on where he was kind of flapping and punching at things that he could have caught, and there was another change in his game as well, that I guess based on what happened at Ibrox with Morelos closing him down, that he was kind of taking a lot less chances with his distribution, and he was just kicking into touch sometimes, and it was fine. Like, I was okay with it. Tommy, did you think, like, was it worrying you when he was punching at these crosses and flapping a little bit, or was it just it was fine because he's still good at the other aspects of the game?
Look, to be honest, I didn't really get too concerned about it because he's not really been that a keeper that comes for crosses since he's been at Celtic. So, and they weren't putting too many crosses near him. I thought most of the crosses were being swept up with Starfelt and Carter Vickers. So, for me, it reminded me of the Ibrox game last year when we beat them 2-1, and they were just trying to get the ball wide and then put lots of crosses into the box, but they were generally being mopped up by Carter Vickers and Starfelt, who I both thought was superb yesterday. And Joe Hart really didn't have a lot to do, in my opinion. He had the one with the free kick, where it came off the ball and he sort of punched that behind, and then there was a cross from Barisic that sort of sailed over, but it wasn't sort of something that gave me a huge amount of concern yesterday.
Yeah, and I think with Bain on the bench as well, you're not going to be too fussy. You're just going to be like, yep, this guy's probably the best we've got, no matter what he does out there. And like we've touched on before, he wasn't ever in any too much trouble really. I think I know they hit the post and they also did actually score, but apart from that, I feel like one moment in the game that was really crucial, game-changing, defining, was early on when it was 0-0, and they get a square ball across the goal, and Carter Vickers gets in and does a slide tackle block, and it looks like, if it's Jamie Carragher doing that slide tackle block, it's an own goal, like 100% of the time, but he manages to get it round the post and out of play, and it was like Tillman's waiting there to tap it in. And if you actually check on the BBC kind of player ratings, they actually give Carter Vickers man of the match, and I thought he did have a few good blocks and a few good tackles, and obviously that one was the standout. Anthony, overall, was Carter Vickers, was he man of the match? Is BBC, are people exaggerating these stats? What was he that good?
I think CCV falls into the Callum McGregor category of you just expect an 8, 9 out of 10 every week because that's kind of what he gives you, and you sort of take it for granted. I think that somebody was on Axum yesterday saying that, like, you used to take Henrik Larsson for granted. He just banged a couple of goals in because that's just what Henrik Larsson did. So I think the same with CCV at the moment. You just expect that solid performance. But I have to say, Carl Starfelt had an absolute stormer last night as well. And I'm not trying to change the topic. I thought that block from CCV was match defining because, I mean, if they get an early goal like that, who knows how the game unfolds from there. But he was onto it and he cleared the danger. But I thought Carl Starfelt was, admittedly, he did try and chip the ball in the 6-yard box over Cantwell's head and sort of smashed it off his face and got the rebound. He was a bit lucky with that one. He did a Cruyff turn on the first half on the 6-yard line as well. So he's a crazy Swede, I don't know, but he's just I can't explain it, but that was probably, I think the BBC was saying that was his best game for Celtic, and I'd have to say it's pretty close because he won absolutely everything, any challenge, every header. He ran Sakala down. He was just a physical presence, and in those sorts of games, I think he really shows his qualities because he just doesn't really have time to think on the ball because it's just frantic. So, but the two of them, yeah, you can make a case for just about anyone, but if you score 2 goals in a cup final and you win 2-1, Kyogo's going to get man of the match, and we can wax lyrical about that as well. But I think he is deserving. But I think something I heard it was Paul say it before. Like, we had performances all over the park, which was the thing that we didn't have at Ibrox. We had probably 3 players at Ibrox that were actually performing to their level or above their normal level. This time we had pretty much the whole team, maybe by 1 or 2, performing at their level or higher, and that's what you need to win a cup final.
Who would you say wasn't performing then? But
I thought Maeda was offensively. I thought he was all over the place. Like, he just couldn't get a cross in, and even for the first goal, admittedly, he drew Davies to him and he sort of dummied it. But I think he was trying to score it and just completely missed it. But the effect of that was that it did free Kyogo up, so we'll give him that. But I kind of thought he had 3 chances to get a cross in and couldn't get one in. And I thought Jota was a bit. He had a couple of flashes, like he had the shot that forced the save from McGregor, and he had another one where he tried to shoot a funny angle and he should have cut it back. But I kind of felt that he just never really got into the game for any real sustained period. He popped up here or there, but I was expecting a big performance from Jota, and I thought he would start, but I just kind of felt that he just didn't quite give what we know he can do. Which has probably been critical. But if you're talking about the rest of the team, I thought the rest of the team were all 8s out of 10. I thought he was maybe a 6.5, a 7.
Paul, what do you reckon was Maeda's defensive performance? Was it so good that it doesn't matter that he was poor offensively?
Yeah, look, I wouldn't even argue that he was poor offensively. He just didn't hit the heights that he probably has done, and we've kind of come to expect. I agree with Anthony. Like, the first 2 or 3 chances he had to go at Tavernier, he overran it. He just hadn't got his position on the pitch right, and then he sclaffed one, and he seemed to sort of get his head down a little bit. I think we should have probably persevered with the swap for longer, because usually they split when Jota and he switch sides. They usually let that balance out for a bit longer of a period. But he was only over there against Barisic for a little while, and I thought he could have, given how we've seen Barisic deal with a Baris pace, I thought that he could have caused them a real issue, because Tav's it's not, I don't think he's as good as some people try and make out, but he is pretty quick, so he's got that in his locker. But crucially, I agree with Anthony. He did try and finish and then sort of fluffed it, but I think he maybe feathered a touch that actually took it right into Kyogo's path. But prior to that, his movement coming off the wing to free up the space for JT, and then he actually, as he moved into that, I guess, inside left channel, you would call it, old school style, that drew Goldson out of position. So Goldson comes out to sort of deal with Maeda. There's a big gap that Moy feeds Taylor in, and interestingly, we've quite often seen Taylor slide that same ball in to the wide man, but this time he's the receiver and Moy slipping the pass in. Because of Maeda's movement, Goldson's thrown out of position, and then Maeda spins in behind him, and Goldson's nowhere, and he's let him drift, which means Davis has to come across to protect the front post, which leaves Kyogo completely unmarked. And it's kind of amazing that both times he scores, he gets, well, first time he's in acres of space. The header, he's in acres of space, and you're right, Anthony, you mentioned it, he should have scored that. and then he gets himself in front for the winner as well. So, they know he's the danger man, but his movement is that good, and the movement of his teammates is that good that the space is developed. And I think that's definitely with the second goal as well, is that McGregor's drive, Moy moves off, and Hatate has the foresight to pull it across rather than lash at a shot or do anything else, or even try and check back. So I think Maeda did a decent job at one of the key points. And look, McCoist is waxing lyrical about him during the match and in the post-match interview with Ange, sort of going, what are you feeding him? Blah blah blah. He gets plugged in at night, but his work rate is phenomenal. He's more than his work rate, clearly, but you never get a minute's peace between him and Kyogo. None of those defenders get a minute's peace. And the amount of times that they track back and nick the ball off a midfielder who's just expecting to have an extra second or two to get their head up and decide where they're going to pass it. It's a massive, and I think Ange touched on that in his post-match interview as well with the broadcasters team, in that he's, that's what they do. They defend from the front. A massive part of the attacking team is to do their part in defense. So yeah, offensively on the ball, he maybe didn't hit the heights that he sometimes has, but I think overall his performance would be justifying that he was up there at those 8s that most of the team hit.
Yeah, I thought Tavernier was doing the covering the angle, so he couldn't get to the byline really, and it was forcing him to come back in and onto his right foot, which was just slowing him down, because it's like he has to turn to get onto that foot, if nothing else. But yeah, Tavernier was just a non-entity as an offensive player in the game, which I think speaks to Maeda, and the fact that Maeda was the last player to be subbed. Like, Ange was just too wary of taking him off because of the job he was doing, keeping Tavernier out of the game. But that's not to say Haksabanovic, like, he did some pretty good things when he came on, and he probably should have scored at least one the way he done. Do you think there's a case to rest Maeda and give Haksabanovic a start next week, Tommy, or do you think we stick with the man?
Look, I reckon that you've definitely got to try and give Haksabanovic a run in the team. I mean, he's a fantastic footballer. He's so skillful. He's different to Maeda. I mean, the thing with Maeda for me yesterday, the reason he was overrunning the ball is he was actually trying to beat him for pace pretty close in towards the box. So he wasn't actually running from a sort of deeper position. And Maeda's not the most skillful footballer, unlike your Haksabanovic, Jota, that sort of thing. So I think that's why I had a bit of a problem offensively. And I think you got to give Tavernier some credit for how he defended him as well when he got into the deep areas. But Haksabanovic, it's interesting why he hasn't played much since we come back from the World Cup. And I'm not sure if he was injured or carrying a knock, because before the World Cup, I think he got Player of the Month, and he scored the winner against Ross County. Sure. So for me, he's definitely due a run in the team, and you can see when he came on yesterday, the skill he's got, and he's definitely a threat. So I would love to see him get a run in the team.
And I think we've got St Mirren away this Sunday, so it's maybe not, if you were going to pick one game, although Maeda had a shocker St Mirren away earlier in the season, so you could make the argument in both directions there, I guess. And obviously Jota is the other one that we just touched on, who hasn't been quite as effective as he could be at the moment. But one player who has been absolutely effective and is fast becoming a lot of people's favourite player, one of their favourite players, is a young Alistair Johnston. Anthony Ralston was back on the bench yesterday, didn't get a sniff. Johnston has been pretty sensational, and I think we kind of half expected it before the game that he was going to put in a lot of dig, because he did put in a bit of dig at his debut at Ibrox, and yesterday was no different. There was one moment where he just shrugs off it. He beats one player, and then Barisic catches up with him, almost catches him cold, but then Johnson doesn't know Barisic is coming. But then when Barisic catches up with him, Johnson just shrugs his shoulders, and just Barisic ends up on the deck. Like, it was like he was just very, very strong, very good offensively, defensively. Is he your new favourite player, Anthony?
That was by far his best game in a Celtic shirt so far. And I know obviously it's a very early career for him in Celtic, but that was an absolute phenomenal performance he put in yesterday. He kept Kent very, very quiet, Kent basically didn't really have much. He had a couple of shots that went way over the bar, and obviously had the one at the post. But apart from that, he kept him exceptionally quiet. He dealt with Barisic on the overlap as well, because Barisic did actually gallop forward a few times. So where Tavernier was sort of blocked in, he did get up a few times and managed to deal with that. He put the cross in for Kyogo's header, so that was him that picked him out for that. And he also played the crossfield ball for one of Haksabanović's chances near the end. It was him that played the ball across. It was a really good pass. And that's in the dying 10 minutes of a game. And he just looked like he could went another 30 minutes, no worries sort of thing. He was just up for it, stuck in when I think it was when Kamara put the challenge in, that bad challenge, the yellow card. It was Johnson who was up, demonstrating and just making sure that they knew that wasn't on, sort of thing. So you need a bit of that in your team. I feel that we've been guilty of being a wee bit soft at times, especially last season. So if he's going to come in and play like that, and he's got the skill and the physicality to back it up as well. He put some challenges in, and I'll just finish by saying that he was on a booking, and then he put that sliding tackle in against Kent in the dying minutes of the game, and he timed it to absolute perfection. He mistimes that's a second yellow, and he's off the park, and then you're under the cosh for the last 5 minutes or so. But it was a great challenge, and just speaks volumes, the guy. And like I said, if he can put performances like that together, because he was getting forward a lot more as well, and actually offering something past that sort of just the sort of, just that pass forward. He was actually getting the overlap, and he was actually contributing offensively. So if he can continue to build on that, Celtic have made a really, really good bit of business signing him.
And I gather he got to take the trophy back to the after-match party at Celtic Park as well. First ever trophies won, so quite a day for the young guy. And he looks like he's really enjoying his time, really settling in. I think the only player we've not really touched on yet is one that I want to bring up in relation to someone else who we should be talking about. And that is Mr. Fashion Sakala, who was up in the first half against Greg Taylor. Now, I thought Greg Taylor, obviously we've talked about briefly about his involvement in the first goal, where him getting in behind is what breaks the line and gives us an overload with the strikers there. But I thought there was times in the first half where they were particularly targeting him with Fashion Sakala's pace, and I thought he did a good job. I think there was one time he was beaten, and Starfelt, of all people it was, that actually covered for him, who's not the paciest player himself. But yeah, Greg Taylor up against Fashion Sakala, who disappeared from the game after he missed that open goal at the start of the second half. And hopefully we'll never hear from the man again. Tommy, are you now a Fashion Sakala fan? Would you like to see, should Greg Taylor get like his name put in on his car or something like that? What's going on here?
Yeah, look, obviously not a Fashion Sakala fan, not a fan of his teeth either. He just needs to mind the gap, obviously. But yeah, no, look, the main thing with Sakala for me is he's got pace. And I think Greg Taylor's had a fantastic season and a half now. He's been tremendous for us. But I think one thing he maybe doesn't have is a lot of pace. And Sakala sort of beat him for that. And I would disagree with you, Sean, in terms of you saying that Starfelt doesn't have much pace. I think Starfelt is very, very quick. And I think that's probably part of the reason he's playing alongside on the left-hand side as well, as he actually gives you that cover, because maybe Taylor doesn't have that defensive pace. But other than that, Sakala didn't really do anything in the game. The one time they did get in behind Greg Taylor, as you say, Starfelt were out, closed them down, and then I think Taylor got back into the box and cleared it for a corner. So, Greg Taylor's had a fantastic season, and you really noticed the difference when he was out of the team. The team's actually a lot more fluid with him in the team, because he just, when he moves into those central positions, picks up the ball, keeps the play moving. He's very important to us. So he had another good game yesterday.
Yeah,
I just want to quickly just say he probably tired the last 10 minutes. He was probably blown a bit because he did lose the ball. He had like a fresh air swing at the ball, and he made a couple of wee mistakes. I just think it was tiredness. But unfortunately, we don't have a left back on the bench at the moment, so it's imperative that he stays fit, because where was Bernabé? Yes, he didn't even make the bench. So we are a wee bit light on there if he's not even able to make the match day squads for cover.
Paul, did you reckon that the win was even sweeter with all the noise that Sakala was making in the build-up to the game? Does that make it better, or is it just a thing that happens at the same time?
Look, it's kind of the cherry on the cake, isn't it? But I'm so surprised that teams still fall into this do their talking in the run up to the match, and it can never go well. The best thing that can happen is you talk a big good game and you win. Okay, so. But more often than not, you're going to leave yourself with egg in your face. Like, what is everyone talking about this morning? They're talking about him running his mouth and him missing that open goal. That's pretty much what the main chat is about with regards to them, other than laughing at follow posts about the house is crumbling again, when a couple of days ago we were gonna get battered. But their players, their fan base, their manager, they run their mouths. And then where are we? Back where we started. We're comfortably ahead. We've touched on it before. We'll say it again. Beale hasn't got any closer to us. We've okay. The points gap's the same, but we've added another trophy, and the goal difference has increased. And we've got to play them twice more. And I'd be pretty confident we'll boost the points differential against them. Let's be honest. If the team was genuinely suffering major illness during the last game, we still managed to get a draw. And that's all. They barely laid a glove on us. They had a 20-minute rally at Ibrox at the beginning of the second half and got themselves ahead and couldn't hang on. And they had pockets of moments in this match, but really, when they're 2-1 down and they got momentum, did they really cause havoc? No, they didn't, and they didn't have anything to sustain it. And yeah. We run out comfortable winners, and with those chances near the end and the chances in the first half that we passed up, 2-1 makes it look like it was a particularly close game, but 3 or 4-1 wouldn't have flattered us.
And we're it's almost in a roundabout way linking what we're talking about with the kind of off the pitch thing. Is Michael's kind of giving us a link here in the comments. Michael Ross, we maintain standards, they don't, and I think their standards really showed this week, not just with the comments of Sakala, but a lot of the other things as well. From in the morning when the Union or Onion Bears, whatever we want to call them, were chasing some of the Green Brigade guys that were just coming down to set up the tifo at Hampden. Obviously, they should have been focusing on their own tifo, which was a bit of a shambles, and not anywhere near levels, standards. Do you know what I mean? Like our tifo, made theirs look like a piece of absolute garbage, which I think is a problem that they often have. I think they don't have a graphic designer in among them.
Pablo Picasso. We'll keep the art theme going this week, and a bit abstract there as well.
Yeah, and it genuinely did look more like a Dundee badge than a Rangers badge. I honestly could not. I was like, because before they were showing it before the game, and I couldn't quite. And not everyone had put their things up yet, and I was like, what are they trying? I literally couldn't tell what they were trying to get at here. And the Celtic one was glorious. It was not just have the colours, but to actually have the kind of moving effect of the fire was really class. I was a little bit annoyed that people had ignored the request to not set off pyro, but because it kind of did block out a bit. But it was what it was. It was pretty good overall. What did you think? Standards tifos? What are we? Is this a thing? Should we be comparing these fan groups, or is it just a kind of a levels thing that they're just not on our level?
Well, all I want to say... Oh, sorry. Tommy, you go.
Sorry,
you're
fine.
Go.
I think...
All right, Tommy, go. Tommy.
I was going to say, look, to me, it's quite irrelevant, but I mean, there's a number of occasions over the years, even when they've not been playing as it, even the signs and the tifos that they put up, they just do not make sense. I mean, it's a pretty common theme. Yesterday isn't the first time that they would have had a tifo that no one could understand exactly what it was meant to be saying. The Celtic tifos have always been a level above, but whether that's actually relevant or is important, to me personally, it's not. But then it might be to some other people. Sorry,
yeah, Anthony.
So all I was trying to say is all week we were discussing what minute would Rangers get a penalty, but what we really should have been discussing is what minute of the game would the Rangers fans make an absolute disgrace of themselves. And it was actually minus 1 minute before the game started, jeering and singing during Warren Gordon's 1 minute applause for the guy's just passed away with cancer, and they can't even go a minute doing that. They're just an absolute disgrace, and they got what they deserved.
And that links back to when the minute silence was disrupted at Ibrox, and we were getting crap for it. And it was actually Sevco fans shouting words that I won't say about that minute, interrupting that minute silence. So yeah, it was overall levels of kind of shambles and pettiness. Like our standard is, keeping quiet in the media, focusing, doing our talking on the pitch. It's winning trophies, 22 in 11 years. Whereas their standards are chasing people at 9 a.m. in the morning, booing the deceased, and doing some pretty shambolic tifos, and then focusing on like what people wear, but then also refusing to print Celtic's name on their shirt. So that was like top level pettiness there. Like every team, and as far as I know, ever has got both teams' names printed on the shirt for a cup final. Sevco yesterday, nah, we're just going to write cup final on it instead. This is from the same team that did Old Firm FC last year, with the big banners and everything. And then to leave the pitch before Celtic were presented the trophy. Do we care, or are we just happy to leave that sitting there as that kind of sums up who they are, Paul?
They lack class, don't they? The hilarious thing is they always talk about standards and get the suit and tie and the brown brogues out, but when it comes to actually having a bit of class and showing a bit of respect when it's due, they haven't got it. They talk a good game, same as what they're going to do in the pitch. They talk a good game and they can't deliver. So to me, it's just a sideshow, and it's just back to the it's the banter years, isn't it? They haven't gone away. They took a little COVID period of gap, and we're back. And look, the most important thing is what we do in the pitch. But in a major rivalry that goes back as long as 12 years, or however many it is, 11. Then you are gonna enjoy it when they start to unravel. And yeah, sterling work by the guys and girls on Twitter that go and enjoy that cesspit of follow, and then take the screenshots and share it for the rest of us, because that always gives you a little snigger after it's like you want to revel in it, and I don't shy away from that. I'm quite happy to admit I like to wallow in the enjoyment of not just the positivity from our side, but the despair on theirs.
Yeah, it's definitely a good healthy dose of schadenfreude, particularly on days like today. And it's probably the 1 week of the year where all Celtic fans will tune into Super Scoreboard or whatever version of, just to hear the first caller will always be a Sevco fan phoning in and crying about, oh, we need to get rid of the manager or whatever, like, whereas literally two days ago he was being touted for the England job, and now it's, oh, he's the worst manager. Anyway, it's predictable as clockwork. Tommy, do they affect your life in any way, or do you just enjoy laughing at their appalling pettiness and lack of class?
Well, I'd be lying if I say it wouldn't affect me. I mean, the thought of having not won yesterday and losing to them would made me sick for 2 or 3 weeks. So I can't say that it wouldn't affect me. But I think you just need to look at the way, if you go back to the COVID title and the way they destroyed Glasgow, to get a sense of what their supporters are like and what they're like culturally. I think that gives you a pretty good example, and it's something that we are so far removed on. And what we stand for as a club with our values, it's just chalk and cheese, and they live in a deluded world as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and if they keep living there, that's fine, because it appears to be supporting our on-field success, and that is what we care about. And that kind of links to our final talking point here. And that's, since that draw at Ibrox, we've now won 10 games in a row, 10 overall domestic games in a row. We've now managed to shut up the mouthy Mhob. That may or may not dent their confidence, which was fragile back in January, but it's been building a bit since then. So I'd actually can't wait to get them again at Celtic Park and put another nail into their confidence, if we can do that soon, and breaking their momentum, building ours. But overall, what does this win mean? Yeah, and before the game, Ange was making the point, this is an isolation. This is different from the other competitions, and he was really repeating that, and the players were repeating it in the press too. But what does this mean overall for the season? And is it okay, or when is it okay to start talking about a treble? Because you can't have it without this, and we've now got the first part of a potential treble. When is it okay to start talking about that, Anthony?
I think when we get into the Scottish Cup final, if we get there, then I think then you start discussing the treble, because by that point the league will theoretically should be pretty much stitched up by then mathematically. Until then, I think it's a bit disrespectful to the other teams still left until we're sort of there. To your other point, had we lost yesterday, I don't think that would have broke our momentum. I think we're quite good at just binning a bad result and moving on to the next one. I think for the other side, the fact that they've lost, that will dent their momentum. And Beale was saying some pretty, some quite interesting things in some of his post matches. I was having a bit of a listen. He was saying it's not the first time we haven't started a game well. And then he also said it's more than once that a few players haven't quite hit the heights and whatever. So as much as I take responsibility, he was equally chucking some of his players under a bus as well. So it'll be interesting to see what the fallout of all that is. But yeah, for us, it's just onwards and upwards. The standards are there. Ange comes out and says, look, we've won. The guys get 24 hours to enjoy it. And then I expect everyone back in on Tuesday, and we go again. We've got St. Mirren next on the weekend, and we go again. And it's just, he never gets too high. He never gets too low. But I will say this, that was probably the most animated I've seen him winning a cup or after a match. I think Beale really did probably piss him off and wind him up this week. And I think it was one of those ones where it was like, I'll show you. And he was giving it the big fist pumps and that after the game. And I think there was a wee bit of, I think he had a mutual respect for Gio. I don't think he's got that with Michael Beale.
Mm-hmm. So, Tommy, Paul, I want to hear both of you, your opinions on this as well. Is it just a League Cup win, or is there a wider context that this is feeding into here? Is there a wider picture? Is there a bigger picture here that this is creating? Tommy?
Well, for me, it's the way they've been talking before the game and leading up to the game, and all the rubbish that Michael Beale's been sort of spouting since he came on board. To me, it's a big puncture in what they were looking to do. So it's going to be interesting to see how they react in the next league game. I'm not sure who they've got, but for us, it's great to win the cup, but it's only one step, and we've just got to keep. I'm going to sound like a football manager, but it's just one game at a time. We've got to focus on St. Mirren on Sunday. And it's the only team to beat us this year. And I actually think St. Mirren, when we played them, have been pretty good. So for me, it's just focusing on the next game, and then, hopefully they'll drop some points. Hopefully this dents their egos and dents Beale's ego, and it's almost upwards for us.
Paul, do you read into it in any context of this trophy count, which has been banded about social media this week? Do you look into it in that context at all, or not?
Look, I think you've got to look at the bigger picture. Yep, you take the guy's point. It's one game. It's one more trophy. It doesn't necessarily need to be season defining, but I think we're not the managers, and we're not in the playing squad. So as fans, we can look ahead a little bit. We can start to get excited. We can look at the possibilities. Look, Hearts is a big game in the cup, so I would say let's not take our eye. Obviously, we're going to look at the next game, and St. Mirren's the next game and all that. But the team's so well drilled, and Ange will keep them on point. And I think that they'll be on point anyway. So, look, the league should take care of itself. I think we're 9 clear. There's only a handful of games really left, and we've got to play them twice. Now, if they beat us twice, then maybe. But I don't think anyone in this podcaster on the chat thinks that that's going to happen. So realistically, the league should take care of itself. Hearts is a tough game in the cup, but you win that, what are you, 2 games away from potentially a treble? So,
well, no, because we've still got a lot of league games to win. But I get your point.
Yeah, okay, but I think you look at the number of points we've gathered so far, and the number of games that are behind us, and the number of games that are still to come. How many points have we dropped so far? Are we going to drop them that many points in the remaining games? Probably not. So I'm not going to sit here and say we're counting our chickens and it's done, and we can just all take. It's not the fans' job to look at one game at a time. That's the manager and the player's job, and they'll continue to do that, and we'll be aware that that's going on in the background. I think we can look ahead and be pretty confident that, all things being equal, we should close out this season. It'd be a massive collapse. Let's put it that way. It's a massive collapse if we lose the title from here. So I think the expectation is that the team continues to perform at the level it does, and we close the season out. The cup's a cup, right? So how many cup games have we had? And the record's been amazing. So law of averages says that we potentially due to slip up in one or get a bad decision in one. But I think we deal with Hearts in the cup and then see where the draws take us from there. But I fully expect us to win the league from here, and then you're a few cup games away from potentially a treble.
Oh, Michael Ross has said in the comments, no treble talk, please. And we can be pretty sure that Ange and the players will not be talking about it or entertaining any questions about it. They barely even talk about winning games. They talk about performances more than they do about winning. And they only really let that slip normally when it is a cup final or when it is the league is wrapped up. And that's the only time they tend to reflect on these things. And whatever psychology is behind that, it's working, and I hope they keep doing it. So we are over our hour, guys, so we're just going to wrap up there. Thanks for everyone that's been tuning in. Just to check out, we do have our shows tomorrow, Tuesday and Wednesday shows for Celtic Down Under. And then the Celtic game this weekend is on Sunday. It'll be 8 p.m. for us, midday in Scotland. I believe it'll be 11 p.m. on the East Coast. For poor Willie, I don't know what's that, midnight, 1 a.m.? I'm not even sure. So it's getting pretty late out there on a Monday morning. So hopefully, please enjoy the shows Tuesday and Wednesday. Enjoy celebrating this League Cup triumph, and just and then for Thursday and Friday, anything you recommend, guys, to get through the week? Anthony, any recommendations?
I'm heading off to Melbourne on Friday for a long weekend. I've got a wedding to go to, so I will be off the pod next week, but I'll be back in a fortnight. Looking forward to it. So hopefully we get the bickies against St Mirren and keep our winning run going.
Mm-hmm. Tommy, what you up to? Any recommendations?
Not really. Lots of coffee. Suffering today, so lots of coffee.
Oh, yeah. That'll do it. And Paul?
I've got my Bucks do on Saturday, so that or stag do for those that are tuning in from the UK. So that will be it's just as well. It's a public holiday here on the Monday because I imagine that they'll still be going partly on Sunday. So hopefully I've sobered up by the time the game kicks off at 8 p.m. Beyond that, new Gorillaz album came out this week, so I've started to have a little listen to that, and there's some good tunes on there as you'd expect. So yeah, if anyone that and 22 years since the first Gorillaz album came out, so that's one to make you feel old if you don't already feel old.
Been a while, yeah. Personally, I'll hopefully try and get down to Johnny Fox's, since you mentioned it was public holiday on Monday, so I'll try and get down there on Sunday night to watch the Celtic St Mirren game. I'd imagine there was at least 100 people there last night. It was a great night. Thanks to all the guys that were bouncing about with me, and Johnny Fox's celebrating a good win. But apart from that, that's all for this week. Go out and rub it into any Sevco supporting family and friends you may have. Don't let them forget that we are the League Cup champions, and that's a deliberate sarcasm there, just before anyone picks me up on that one. Okay, thanks everyone, and see you next week. Hail, hail.
Hail, hail.
Hail, hail.
Hail.